Good afternoon or evening, all. We shall be getting started very soon here, waiting for our final two panelists who've assured us they're logging in now, and then we'll get started. Thank you for being on time, and we promise it will be worth the wait.
I finally figured it out.
No problem. I just gave an announcement to our attendees who are now all joining in that we'll be starting very soon. We're waiting on our last two panelists. I just resent the invites to our two people, so they should be joining very soon. All right, the last two are moving to webinar now. We shall be getting started very shortly.
All right. Hey, everybody. I think we got everyone here. All right. It's good to see everyone.
So I think Love.
Yes, I am here in the background. I will start you guys off with a nice introduction.
Cool.
Good evening to all and all of our attendings. My name is Anani, and I am one of the PBMs for SNMA and one of the mentors for the Tour for Diversity in Medicine. We are happy to present this emergency medicine panel to you all in collaboration with SNMA and LMSA. We have all of our panelists here who will be introducing themselves shortly, but we will start with our moderator, Dr. Italo Brown, who will be your host for the evening. Take it away, Dr. Brown.
Hey, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Depending on where you're at, you might have just gotten off work, you might have been at home, but I am happy to have such a good audience today. And we've got a panel of experts, of folks who are esteemed colleagues, individuals that I love. And we're going to talk a little bit today about emergency medicine, what the application process is like, and just to start off everything, I'm an emergency medicine physician at Stanford, an assistant professor in social EM. I have been doing work in social justice and health equity for probably now about 10 years, but I've been working with Tour for Diversity for longer than that. This is something that is like a family for us. And to be able to moderate this panel today is an esteemed pleasure. I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Dr. Bradby, and then we'll kind of like popcorn from there.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Cassandra Bradby. I am the Residency Program Director at ECU Health Medical Center in Greenville, North Carolina. I, too, am an emergency physician, a graduate of Meharry Medical College. So Tour for Diversity has a special place in my heart. I'm really excited to be here with all of you tonight and to hopefully address some of your questions as we enter this interview season.
Excellent. I'll go over to Joel next.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Joel Moll, Vice Chair of Education, Professor at Virginia Commonwealth University, Recovering Program Director. I think that is the most appropriate term ever that I've heard. Was Residency Director for about 8 years at VCU. Previously involved with ADIM and SAM and other miscellaneous things, and happy to help any way I can.
Thanks so much, Joel. All right, Marseille.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Marseille Wilder. I'm an assistant professor of emergency medicine, like all of my colleagues here, except for Dr. Moll, at George Washington University. I also completed my MD degree at Howard University College of Medicine. That's what I have in common with Love. And I am on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee at my department. I'm also a researcher, and my research focus is in social determinants of health and racial disparities in emergency medicine. I have been mentoring and helping students, diverse students, match into emergency medicine for some time now, about 6 years. And so Tour for Diversity has a very special place in my heart as well.
Thank you. And Nancy.
Sorry, I was having some technical issues. My name is Nancy Anaya, pronouns are she, her, ella. I am also assistant professor at University of California, San Francisco, and San Francisco General here in the Bay Area. Thank you for having me. I would say an SMA has a big part in my heart because it was the community who allowed me to get into medical school and who was like my support system. And so currently I hold the role of director of ultrasound and part of the DI committee here at UCSF. And like many others, been working with our university to just increase the number of Black and Brown students and mentor and provide opportunities. I'm the director of also pipeline program here, focusing on increasing like diversity in emergency medicine as well. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, I feel like I am a fan of many of you all in a variety of ways, and I hope that our participants here understand that this is a core group of individuals who were once in the same positions as they were and have been able to not only navigate the challenges of trying to get into a residency program, but also to excel and to do so fully embracing their identities. So this is an important thing to kind of elevate. I'm going to start off kind of without beating around the bush, I think that last year for many of us, there was a, a kind of a shock, like some shock and awe around the match. It was the match heard around the world for so many people. The numbers seem to be a little bit different from previous years. And there was a lot of speculation around what happened. And I want to give you all, as a panel of experts, but also people who basically like worked and lived through that and have had to probably, tease out these particular reasons a little bit more commonly than the average ER physician, the opportunity to share. What do you know about this? So let's start back with Cassie, and then we'll work our way around the horn. Is that cool? Let's do it.
Okay. So I actually find it like kind of comical that it was the match heard around the world and everybody was shocked. And the reason I find that entertaining is because we had open spots like in the triple digits the previous year. So no one should have actually been surprised that this occurred, especially given the preceding academic year. On top of a pandemic, on top of, I think we won the award for most burnout as a specialty. And then we also decided we were going to put out a statement saying, you know what, there might not be jobs in emergency medicine in, X number of years, which we're going to quickly retract not that long after that and say, oh, JK, we messed up and didn't account for attrition and all kinds of other things. And so just kidding, jobs are going to be fine, which, by the way, y'all, they have been fine and they have bounced back to pretty much where they were in the before times, which is what I call the pre-Rona. So I think some of this was, of our own doing, by accident. And so it is what it is. We will rebound again. But I do think that in a time where I think we've all reprioritized like what is important to us. I think the pandemic really made people sit down and think to themselves, like, what is important to me? What do I want to focus on? What are my values? Where do I want to spend my time? And I think some of that, like, I think people really looked hard at specialties and tried to see like what was going to work best for them or what they were going to find most palatable or honestly less stressful. And so I think some of that also played into the match last year. And I think, we as a specialty could have done a better job with some PR last year, and probably still need to be doing some better PR. It is what it is. But I'll be honest, like the specialty really, it hasn't changed. I think, we still see a bunch of sick people. I'm seeing people who haven't seen a doctor in 20-30 years. I'm seeing people who are like, I don't have high blood pressure, and I'm like, well, ma'am, your blood pressure is 200/110, so I'm gonna vote that you do. And she's like, well, nobody's ever told me that before. But when's the last time you went to the doctor? 30 years ago. Well, there's problem number one. And so I mean, that didn't change. That was happening before the pandemic. That's happening now. We're filling the gap for everyone else. I think what we learned during the pandemic is that healthcare in America needs help, and that like we are the front line to providing that help, and we're filling the gaps for everyone else. The shortage of primary care doctors, the closure of rural hospitals, like we are filling the gap for all of those things. And so I think, depending on what you would like to do in emergency medicine, like this is a great time to be an EM. Like we are at the forefront of restructuring healthcare in this country. And I think that the more we advocate, the better we can do as a society for the people who need us the most. I don't know if I 100% answered your question, Italo, but for the most part, I think the biggest thing is that like we probably need some better PR as a specialty, and we should not have been surprised.
I want to go ahead and open that up to anyone who has other like thoughts or supplementary things to add around what that experience was like, and whether you're not worried, or if you are worried, what kind of like is the rationale behind it.
I mean, I'll just echo Cassie. I think she said it extremely well. I think when this job thing came out in the middle of the pandemic, it was like shooting yourself in the foot. And honestly, healthcare system is stressed tremendously at this point, and that's no matter where you go. And I think emergency medicine being the canary in the coal mine, we're kind of feeling it first. But any specialty who thinks that they're oblivious to this is mistaken. We're just feeling a lot of stress right now. But having said that, we also have a tremendous opportunity to make a difference, because people are coming to us sicker than ever, more complicated than ever, our ability to make a difference in people's lives, which is why people go into emergency medicine, is more present than ever. We are the ones that can advocate and help patients. And if that's what really calls you, you need to follow what your calling is, whether that's emergency medicine or something else. Don't listen to other people. Our residents, when they graduate, have no trouble getting jobs. They're still getting signing bonuses. They're still getting opportunities. Maybe they have to work a little harder than what they did in the past, when basically people came to them. But that's not that there's no jobs. It's just that it's a different thing. I mean, emergency medicine, having been doing this for 30 years, sadly, I guess I'm the maybe elder member of the panel. I can tell you, it used to be pretty wide open. There were very few emergency physicians. And so you could demand whatever you want to demand, and you could get, especially into rural markets, pretty easily. And you got a lot of positive things. And so now we're just kind of re-equilibrating a little bit, but it's still pretty open for everybody. So please don't listen to the naysayers. Go after what your heart is.
I'll just echo Joel and Cassie. They said everything that needs to be said. I just want to remind everyone, the pendulum is just swinging the other way. I remember now 13 years ago, when I was interested in emergency medicine as a medical student, I had attendings tell me, well, why would you want to do that? You're such a competitive student. Why would you want to waste your time in EM? No one wanted to do emergency medicine. It wasn't a competitive specialty yet. And so I was being steered away from it because they thought my scores were too high for emergency medicine. And then I remember, as soon as I was a first year attending, students who were coming to me and were rotating had, step scores that rivaled like orthopedic surgery, right? It was so competitive. And now we are in the middle of a collapse of our healthcare system. Everyone has watched our healthcare system collapse. They've watched entire hospitals close in rural areas and medically necessary areas. They've watched the collapse of nursing profession and how travel nursing and nursing in itself can affect our profession and how we can care for patients. And they've watched the stress that emergency physicians have been under. And of course, as Dr. Moll said, actually publishing a job status report that was as negative as it was scared a lot of people away. But to be quite honest, there's a silver lining to everything. And this is a really great opportunity for everyone on this call. I'll tackle the elephant in the room. You may not have to work as hard to become emergency physicians because there are going to be 500 open spots. Matter of fact, you will probably be ranked a little bit higher and may have opportunities at programs that might be looking at students a little bit more holistically because they want to make sure they fill this year, right? And so, hey, apply to Harvard, apply to Yale, apply to Stanford, join Dr. Brown, right? These are programs that may have been really tight on numbers and you had to have this score cut off before they look at applicants. But I think, everyone's taking a good long look in the mirror. Number one, we want to make sure all institutions are really looking at making sure they're increasing diversity. And diversity has nothing to do with me not saying that students are excellent, but because those are not mutually exclusive, but they are going to start looking at students a little bit more holistically in general as well to make sure that they are getting enough applicants in to make sure that they have enough students to rank. So this is actually a great time for everyone interested in emergency medicine.
And apply to PCU too, please.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to keep rolling with some of these questions and we can navigate through the tougher terrain. So given that we kind of think that this was a poor PR job of expressing the fact that this is not something that is brand new, but also not sharing the details around how people are still getting jobs, people are still highly competitive in our space, and the responsibilities that we have still exist, if not are growing. Do you think that this year's match is going to be one that is a little bit more difficult, or do you think it's, I heard a little bit about what Marseille said in terms of it could be, making those reach schools at some point, the primary ones that you apply to, but do you think that it's going to be competitive?
Ask me in September. I won't know until I see them, right? In my head, I'd like to say I don't think so. If last year's numbers are anything to go by in comparison to the year before, I don't think it will be more competitive than last year. I think I think people are going to be willing to be way more open-minded than ever before. I mean, emergency medicine has historically not been particularly IMG friendly, partly because we require a standard letter of evaluation. And that letter, you can't garner it unless you have rotated at a place that has an EM residency program, which is very hard to do as an IMG. And so I think last year people were more open-minded about, letters that weren't from EM residency programs, folks who came from other places that haven't had a bunch of EM clinical experience, which historically would not have gone well in the match. But I think people were definitely doing more holistic review last year than before, and I would presume that that's going to continue moving forward.
Nancy,
Yeah,
how do you? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
I think we're hoping that things level out. And, I don't think things are going to rebound this year. I think it's too soon. But that's our hope. We're hoping that the bleeding stops.
I think very similar, like obviously you can't tell the future, but I think even from us at UCSF, similar to other people have said, it allowed us, I think obviously post-COVID and how many people of color were impacted, it allowed our institution to like refocus, and it allowed us to like push for students of color to really like advocate for them and get them in our like top ranks for all the lived experience that they had. So I like really hope that continues, and I also feel that more students from these communities that maybe thought that EM wasn't a space to really impact long-term like care and preventive care after COVID have really like realized that an emergency department is a place where you can do preventative medicine and really impact these communities long-term. So for me, this last year, although around the US, maybe the numbers were a little bit lower, at UCSF, I feel we didn't necessarily feel it as much, and we were able to really like advocate and push for the students that we wanted to be there.
Marcia, you have additional thoughts?
I was just going to say, I agree, Cassie, we'll see in September, but I do believe the pendulum hasn't completely started to swing the other way. And so I do believe this year is going to be as competitive or less competitive than last year. And so again, I think this is just a great opportunity for anyone interested in emergency medicine to really get their feelers out, start talking to program staff, handing out business cards if possible, going to ASAP and SAM and AEM and going to the residency fairs, reminding people of what their names are, taking down names, sending emails. I think this is the time, and I think that will breed success.
One of the things that I was having a conversation with some rotators this morning, or some folks who were on clerkship this morning about, was just the fact that, to me, emergency medicine has not become less desirable. It's still cool. It's still something that gives people those lifestyle benefits that we initially kind of like chose this specialty for, but also you get access to patients in a way that a lot of other specialties don't. And so I don't feel that it has lost its zest or its zeal. Do you all get those impressions from any students, or do you personally feel like that's the trend right now?
I think one of the things, and Dr. Bradby pointed it out perfectly, I think one of the things that really just shot us in the foot was the job report. For all the students that have no idea what we're talking about, there was basically a needs assessment for our specialty looking at the projection of our workforce in about 20 years. And because there have been a plethora of new residencies, the job report basically forecasted that there would be more doctors than jobs in 20 years. They then walked that statement back after accounting for attrition, meaning docs who will retire, and noted that there will not be a surplus of docs for jobs and that the job market will remain stable. But by then the damage had been done. It scared a lot of students away. No one wants to go into medical school and pay $200,000, $300,000 worth of loans to, in maybe 5-10 years, not have a job. And so people who may have been interested in emergency medicine were possibly scared away from our specialty. I do not think, Italo, that the specialty itself, lost its luster with students. I still think that students think it's a great specialty, and not just for the lifestyle benefits and the shift work, but loving all aspects of medicine. As an emergency physician, we take care of everyone, anytime, anywhere. We can solve problems, and not just solve problems for patients, but solve problems for our departments. We are thought leaders. We are on the front lines. We are at the Capitol building, changing policy. We are the front lines of research, changing communities. We are the front lines of everything. And I think that people still appreciate that. I think that people still like taking care of a 70-year-old guy with constipation and a 30-year-old STEMI or gunshot wound to the chest. I think people like being able to take care of babies and like being able to take care of pregnant women and psych patients. I think people who like our specialty like it all and like being master resuscitationists. I always joke that the internal medicine people run away from a code when we're running to them, right? We're like the firefighters of cardiac arrest. But I don't think that we've lost our luster in terms of what we do. I think we need better PR, just as Dr. Moll said. I think that we need to reassure students that our job market is stable, our jobs are safe, and that we are still changing our communities, and we are still, one of the best specialties out there.
Yeah, it was interesting when the job report came out, they also had in the stats so that 50% of the people in emergency medicine were age 50 or higher. And I'm like, and you think there's going to be a problem with getting jobs? Why? And so, of course, what happened during the pandemic, not only in emergency medicine, but across the board, I had multiple of my physicians who retired and was like, I have enough money, I'm retiring, I don't want to deal with the pandemic, what have you. And that was every specialty, not just emergency medicine, but I think you see it with us because we're so dynamic more quickly. But I don't think that's different than any other specialty. And I personally feel that there was some agendas in that job report, and I think you have to understand that a little bit as well. So please don't let that scare you. Where you're choosing a specialty for a lifetime, and you want to have something you're going to be passionate about, and regardless of what the circumstances.
I love that. I want to get into a little bit more of the actual application elements now, because what I'm hearing from everybody, and this is something that I think we have to, this is effectively the PR that was needed, is the fact that everyone from the ground level is seeing that emergency medicine is thriving. There's no signs of it slowing down, and it should offer reassurance to all the participants and anyone who is interested in emergency medicine that not only they're going to have a job, but they'll have a job that continues to look the way that it did when the people who are training them first entered, with the exception of it being probably a little bit more diverse than it once was. So I'm going to add some more questions in here. What I see often in terms of some of the questions I get from people who are interested in emergency medicine is, how do you all tease out like whether or not there's going to be a geographic preference, or if there's something that the program directors are going to start to look for in sculpting those classes? Like, what things, if I am a let's say person applying this year, should I be aware of in terms of like number of letters? Is there a new change in the way that the application is looking? Could you share with us some details for those who are dealing with that as we speak?
All of your programs should have something out there that says what they require. So in terms of, do they need 1 slow, 2 slows, no slows, 3 letters, whatever, it should be out there on the internet somewhere to tell you like what the requirements for the programs that you're applying to are. Know those requirements. Like if you know that they require 3 letters and they're not specific about what kind of letters, then make sure you have 3 things in there. Make sure that you've submitted and released your transcripts and your like all the things that are supposed to be in the application. You submitted and assigned your personal statements to the right program, to the right specialty, and all of that kind of stuff. Like, it is the little things that sometimes shoot you in the foot. Like, you wrote the personal statement, you uploaded it, and then didn't send it to anyone. And so now your application is incomplete. When folks are trying to read 1,000+ applications, they're generally not going to take the time to individually email everybody whose application is incomplete to say, hey, your application is incomplete. They will just move on to the next one. So your goal as we approach, I think, September 27th, whichever the Wednesday is that week, is to make sure that all of your application pieces are there. Everything that you control should be uploaded and assigned so that when Eris goes live to programs, all they have to do is click on your name and read your stuff. They don't have to wonder about the gaps. They don't have to wonder about what's missing because it is all there. This year, Eris changed in that you are only allowed to have 10 experiences. Put whatever you want there, whatever you want to talk about. If you don't want to talk about it, don't put it in there. If you can't talk about it, don't put it in there. Because I guarantee you that'll be the thing somebody asks about. Folks have also been told not to put in non-clinical, non-doctor type jobs. Definitely put in there things that are customer service related, people related, public relations related. Because if y'all haven't noticed, that is what we do. We are the entrance to the hospital, right? Like we liaison with everyone in the hospital. So like a lot of what we do is peopling. So if you had a job that did peopling, customer service, serving, bartending, hosting, that kind of stuff, that is amazingly helpful in emergency medicine. So don't negate those things because you're like, it's not clinically relevant. Actually, it's probably more clinically relevant than your scribe job was. So keep those things in mind. I would also say make sure that you are explaining everything that you can. If you know that you failed step 2, please write about what happened there and how you rebounded and how you learned from the experience. Don't have a red flag that you did not address somewhere in this application because people will just make up what happened or they will presume the worst. So you might as well just tell them up front because they're going to ask if they interview you anyway. So it's just easier if you tell them up front so they can decide what they want to do with that and hopefully interview you regardless. So make sure you address those things somewhere. There's a new place for hardships where you can talk about it there, talk about it in your personal statement. So you've got a couple areas where you can do that. Think you asked about geographic preferences. Do you? I mean, I don't have a real good opinion on that because it's new. And so every program director will be seeing it for the first time this year. And so we're going to find out what folks do with it by the end of the year. But I couldn't tell you this year. I'm probably going to look at it and be like, okay.
Yeah, I would just add on that I think the fact that emergency medicine is a little less competitive hopefully will make people feel more comfortable to be who they are. And to kind of embrace their identities. I've counseled people over the years, as a gay man to, people go back in the closet when they apply. And I think that's a horrid thing. And, having been in the closet when I applied. And so it's one of those things where, you have these rich life experiences. And I think a lot of places are looking for those. And, you should feel comfortable being who you are because you want to be comfortable where you train. And if you have a program that doesn't embrace that, I would just encourage people to please, if you have great accomplishments in whatever areas, it's fine to include those. In fact, it helps us to get to know you, helps you to stand out. So easy for me to say, I totally realize that, or any of us to say that, because we're in a position of, on the other side of things and have some privilege with that. But I would just encourage you. I think that's one of the benefits of what's going on with emergency medicine in the last couple of years is that you can be yourself a little bit more and not have to fear that you have to hide that.
One thing that I look a lot at and I notice a lot of my colleagues.
Hey, Nancy, I think it's chopping you up a little bit.
It's like longevity, your activities. If there is education, a little bit better, maybe better. Yeah. Okay. So for me, and what a lot of people is anything that you've committed for a long time, right? Like if you keep the Special Olympics, like teaching soccer for like
Hey,
8
Nancy,
years.
we're losing the fidelity on some of what you're saying.
College, and now applying, and so we see.
I was saying we're losing some of the fidelity on what you're saying. It may be worthwhile to call in if there's a problem, but we can. I'm trying to summarize some of what you were sharing.
Okay. Let me try calling in then. Yeah, sorry. Like weather and wind is kind of really bad. so that they can.
I understand.
While she's calling in, I'll just throw my 2 cents in. I'll echo. I really want to hone in on what Joel said about being your authentic self. And I think when Dr. Brown opened this webinar, he talked about the fact that everyone on this call has pretty much is their authentic self. And that is so important to present your authentic self during this process. Because again, you don't want to give this cookie cutter version, and then when it's time to be the real you, you are ousted from your program. I want to remind everyone on this call that students of color are dismissed from their programs at almost a 3 times higher rate than students that they're non-white, they're non-Hispanic white counterparts. And so you need to sell yourself as who you are so that a program that wants you for you accepts you. It's really like dating. It really is. You need to be married to the right program, and the right program likes you upfront and wants you at their program, and they value you. I always tell students, trust the match. They get so upset and they're like, Dr. Wilder, I got my 4th choice. I'm like, 1 through 3 didn't like you and you didn't belong there, or they would have put you higher. And so you matched where you belong, where you're valued, and where you will thrive. And so I just want to remind everyone on this call really to be your authentic selves. That's 1. 2, they talked about kind of like the positives. I just want to put some red flags in your ears. Number 1, if you write a personal statement for a couple of specialties, remember to submit the right specialty to ERAS. I don't want to read your personal statement about how you want to be an ENT doctor because you made a mistake. That's 1. 2, find someone who is trustworthy to read your recommendation letters, because some attendings will also submit a letter in your behalf that is not your name because they're just cutting and pasting. So find someone like in your admin office to say, hey, can you just look over my letters as they get uploaded to ERAS, even though you're not allowed to see them. Someone that you trust, or someone that can just say, yep, these are all fine. We had someone like that at Howard that we utilize very heavily. Another thing, like Dr. Bradby said, if you put it on your activities, you need to be able to talk about it. I'm a researcher. That's what I do. That is what makes my money from my department. So when you put that you were, doing bench work in Dr. So-and-so's lab, for a year and a half, and these were your outcomes, we're going to talk about it. I want to know your mixed methodology. I want to understand your outcomes. I want to understand, what your limitations were. And if you can't answer my research questions, I don't think you did it. So don't put that on your CV if you're not ready to talk about it in detail. Don't put your experiences on your CV that you don't remember because they happened 12 years ago. Be ready to talk about everything on your CV, or else that's a really big red flag. And then the last thing I want to just mention is that it's really important to, when you're interviewing and going, through this entire process, to just be mindful that you will end up where you belong, and to not shroud yourself in doubt and then allow that to lead before you. Okay, everyone on this call will be fine. I do want to stress that we have moved away from step 1 now that it's pass fail, and step 2 means a lot, but not as much as your SLOs and your letters of recommendation. I want to see that people trust you. I want to see that they think you're clinically competent, and I want to see that they trust you around people. And if you don't have letters that reflect that, that's kind of a red flag for us, even more so than like a stellar step 2 score. So being mindful of how you perform on your rotations. Don't like check out because you're a 4th year and not do well, because that will reflect in some of your letters, and then that's a red flag for us. So just be mindful of your performance this year. That's really going to help you, match when it's time to match in 2024.
No, this is all golden information. Those positives and those red flags, I think, are stuff that we need to hear. I just want to kind of chime in on a couple of those things. I remember, like I said, I always go based upon what students share with me in terms of their experiences and what those conversations are like when the members of our group come and say, hey, what did you think of this resident, during, or this not resident, this student on a rotation? And then we look back at their application and I'm like, wow, when I asked about this didn't even seem to be something they were passionate about. I'm like, well, why did they spend so much time talking about it in the interview? And I see them in person and it doesn't even seem like it's something they truly care about. I found that a lot with diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. They would never speak about it. And I'm like, I'm the guy in the department who does this. And so when we were on a rotation together to not bring it up, I don't know, it's really interesting to me. So I think consistency is important. So if you're on a rotation and you have something that you're passionate about, really building your brand around those things might be important. And if you don't have the opportunity to rotate there, just making sure that there's symmetry so that if they ever ask you or ask someone in, because emergency medicine is small. If a phone call is ever placed or someone brings up your name, if that's something that they actually can say, oh, I remember them because they are passionate about this, and it aligns, that works in your favor too. So something that I just remember. Any other red flags or things that you all can think about off the top of your head, other than maybe like grammatical errors or someone reassigning a letter that's not correct? Any things that come to you all's minds as far as red flags for applicants?
I mean, one thing I will say is I think, the personal statement, I both hate that, mainly hate it, but sometimes like it too. And so, have somebody who knows you, who's not in medicine, read it. And like, is this who you are? Right. Because I think that's really important, because sometimes things will come off bizarrely. And, and most personal statements I think are pretty neutral, but sometimes it can really help you and sometimes they can really hurt you. And so you just want to make sure that it's reflecting who your friends and who your loved ones think you actually are.
Please don't tell us what we do in the personal statement. Don't. Every personal statement, I want to be an emergency physician because you guys take care of sick people and you do A, B, C, D. I know what I do. I get paid to do it. You don't got to tell me what I do. Talk about you. Tell me about you. That's it. That's my 2 cents.
Also, do not reiterate your entire CV in your personal statement. If you would like to highlight like the point that you're making about being a leader and how you want to be a leader in medicine, and that's what you want to use emergency medicine to get there, and you want to mention that you were a national leader in EMRA, that makes sense. To list every role you've ever had as a leader in your personal statement is a waste of space, right? Because you've probably already listed some of that in your experiences. So if you can talk about something different in your personal statement that was not highlighted in your experiences, in your research, that's maximizing your application because you're telling us more and more about you. In terms of red flags, make sure that you read your dean's letter or MSPE before it gets posted, because you need to know what it says. You cannot change it usually unless it is wrong, but you need to know what it says. So if you had a professionalism violation and it is listed in your MSPE and you didn't know, and you get blindsided when somebody asks you about that, like that's going to be a problem for you because you're not going to be prepared with an answer, right? That's something you're going to want a prepared answer for. And then the other thing is like you also need to know like what interesting facts they put in there about you, because people will ask about those things too. Now that they took out hobbies from ARIS, like we don't get to ask about those anymore. Like I'm gonna guess that the fact that you're the first, black belt in Taekwondo in your family, when that gets listed as one of your special facts in your dean's letter, somebody's gonna ask you about that. So you got to know that it's there. Also, what comments are there from your rotations and whatnot, because if you had a bad spin on internal medicine, somebody might ask you what happened on internal medicine. You at least got to know that it's written there. So I would say, like, in terms of red flags, I think that's a big one. And then not addressing the things that you already know are problems. Like, that would be the other thing.
Hey, Nancy.
Hey, hoping that this is better.
It's a little choppy still.
Because I tried this phone and it wasn't letting me.
Okay, no worries. So we were talking about red flags from applications. Do you have any that stand out off the top of your head that you've seen either in reviewing an applicant or being a part of the review process that you would advise against?
One thing that I've noticed, especially with the big focus on DEI, almost like every personal statement has like something about equity and like diversity. And if you put it in there, and I don't see anywhere else that you have anything about that in your 10 statements, it kind of upsets me, and it like gives me a red flag that you're just putting it because it's like a phase that's going on in the rest of the United States, and you're actually not putting the work in. So to me, that's, if you write about it, like you have to prove about it, like prove it. Don't just like write this blanket statement. So, and that's a personal pet peeve, but a lot of people in this work realize that that's happening.
Same. I think that it is rather telling. And it's like people are riding a wave. And so, it's not going to be the wave that gets you into emergency medicine. It should be something that you're truly passionate about. Joel.
Yeah, I was just gonna say along the same lines of, not telling us what we do for a living. Don't tell me something about my program that is not true. And that happens almost every year that somebody puts in their personal statement, they try to customize and they're like, I really like your program because it does X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, no, we don't, and so just be very careful, especially, you might do different statements or emails or whatever to different programs. Just make sure that you're doing that. Cause whether it should insult the program, it probably will.
On that note, when you send your letter of interest, please write it specifically to the program that you are sending it to. It is more favorable if you address it correctly to the person you are sending it to. So sending it to me as Miss Bradley is generally frowned upon because I am not only not Miss Bradley, I am Dr. Bradby. So like that is a good way to shoot yourself in the foot because it shows lack of attention to detail. And then on top of that, like I might be insulted to some degree too. So there's that. And then the other thing is like when you write the blanket one and then send it to 100 programs, like people talk, number one. And then number two, there's no way for you to personalize that email so that everybody feels like you're really writing to them. And so like, if you're going to write to a program about how much you want to go there, then make sure it talks about like, if you really want to go to GW, we'll talk about how you grew up in DC and this is how, this treats the patients that your neighbors and family and friends and things like that, right? Because it's specific to the program that you're applying to. But like, if you just write, like you're looking for underserved populations, and you want to be in an urban area, that's not very specific to that program. And the presumption would be that you sent that same letter to 50 other places, right? So if you're going to send a letter of interest, make it worth your while, make it so much bang for your buck that the several hours you spent doing this, like actually turn into some cash for you. So take the time to personalize it to the program so that they feel your actual interest in the program.
Yeah, the worst thing is when you send one of those coin letters to every program, but the font addressing to the program director is different than the font in the text of the letter. That's like right there, you're like dead.
Do we have enough time? 1 minute.
Go for it.
My two pet peeves, I'm just echoing what both of them said in terms of making sure you personalize the letter. Be mindful that, again, like Dr. Bradby said, everyone talks. Don't address everyone as doctor until someone says, oh, I'm not a doctor. Just assume everyone's a doctor. So, hey, doctor, blah, blah, blah. Greetings, doctor. Everyone's a doctor. Don't address anyone as Miss or Mr. Just be corrected and let them demote themselves. The worst thing to do is demote a physician that you were trying to have some favor with to enter their program. That's 1. 2, just as we are trying to give you pearls to be great on paper, be good in person. I always tell the story about 2 years ago, a medical student tried to kick me off her computer because she didn't know that I was the 3 p.m. attending that she was going to present to. And she's like, I need this computer right now. And I'm like, oh, well, why do you need it? And she proceeded to tell me that she was busy seeing patients and I was in her way because she didn't realize I was the attending. It doesn't matter that she didn't look at my badge or look at my scrubs. Treat everyone like they are more important than you. Everyone, don't assume who everyone is. Don't walk in a room and assume this is, an intern. It's probably the attending. Assume everyone in the room is the attending. Also speak to everyone. It is always a pet peeve, and I always notice when a student is treating the attendings like celebrities and steps over the housekeeper, gets in their way, right? Treat everyone with respect because it gets noticed when you don't. So as good as we're trying to make you on paper, please be that good in person. Be the good person that your parents raised you to be. That's my last pet peeve. I'm a shut up.
No, and especially coordinators. Don't act a fool to a coordinator. And then they're going to tell us, trust me.
So real quick, a lot of students are currently on rotations or in their clerkships or may still have clerkships to go. At this stage in the game, what are some things like quick bullet point recommendations that you could give for them to stand out, especially as we near that submission deadline?
I always admonish students to be just proactive. You are not stepping on toes by being proactive. I think students get nervous because you feel like, you kind of don't belong, you're in the way, you're a student, you are an active part of the team. Just stick your chest out and act like you're a part of the team, right? Push that patient to x-ray, tell the resident first or the attending first, right? Take that call from surgery on the appendicitis that has to go to the ER or the OR, right? Be proactive in things that you can be helpful with. It is always a red flag when like students are like kind of hanging around on their phone. And even though you may be looking up on something on up to date, just look that up on the computer so everyone can see that what you're looking at is up to date, so that we don't think that you're like hanging out and not doing anything. And this doesn't just go for your emergency medicine rotations. This is all of your rotations. You want your letters to sound like you walk on water. And the only way that happens is if you are being proactive at every turn, because everyone's going to say the same thing. They're so proactive. They really are engaging with patients. They're a great part of the team. That's what we want to hear, because at 3 o'clock in the morning, I want to know I can depend on you. And so you having those actions while you're still on rotations and that being reflective in your letter is what's going to stand out when it comes time to match. So just being proactive on every single rotation. Try not to look bored, even if it's psych and you hate psych. Take those histories, be proactive, ask the attending if you can go back and reassess that psychotic patient to see if the benzos kicked in, right? Because that's what's going to get noticed and that's what's going to go into your letters.
Yeah, I would say the same thing as far as, but I would say ownership. Own your patients.
Agree with everything. I'm a nocturnist, so I like, obviously my attention span is like of a 2-year-old. So I really like people who are like, hey, kind of ask me like my preferences. And so I'm like very straightforward. It's like, I know you're in med school, but student, but we're going to work on things is efficiency and like speed in your presentation. And I always say like lead with like your ownership of what you think it is. And if you're going to tell me a differential, like I need you to tell me why you eliminated it. Don't just list me things that are on WikiM, because it's like chest pain and everything is there. So that's really helpful. And then, never say, hey, I already seen 10 chest pains. Is this your 11th chest pain? Like, pick it up. Even if you've seen that for like 12 or 13 times. So that's really helpful for me. And then just like, one thing that I noticed, pay attention during sign out. And they say, hey, I noticed that you have to do a lab test to be follow up, even though it wasn't like your patient, you were paying attention to like the team. And so that has been to me some of the best students and like really showed me teamwork.
Cassie?
I would also say know what the expectations are for the rotation and do them. So if you know that you have to give a presentation during the rotation, take the time to make sure that sucker is banging. If you know that you have to be at 4 sim things and this conference and such, show up, be on time, be engaged, be awake. If you are on like Zoom, like have your camera on, look like you're interested in it, talk in the chat if you have questions, like don't just ask things to be asking things, but like, look engaged. And I think the biggest thing is like, don't give off the wrong impression. And what I mean by that is like, that's the being late. That's the like sitting back in your chair and putting your feet up when everybody else is running around. That's the being rude to people when you don't have to be, that kind of thing. So like, just put your good foot forward at all times and be best friends with the coordinator. Like Joel said, because if my coordinator doesn't like you, I am not allowed to hire you. Like I legit, that's a rule. So, be your best self.
And my little piece to add is understand that just because a person may not work in that portion of the decision-making process doesn't mean they don't have influence in that decision-making process. So I've watched sometimes students pitch toward, if they're working with the, assistant program director, they'll go extra hard, but when they work with the random nocturnist or the person who's a research heavy focused individual, they don't work as hard. They kind of like only pitch. I mean, they pitch to who they want to actually impress. So you should actually approach it as if you're trying to impress everybody, no matter who they are, no matter whether or not they are an emeritus in the department or they're a fellow that's doing their shift. You don't know who has the certain amount of influence in the ear of the decision makers in the department. So, and it's actually, it's favorable for it to be a consistent read across everybody. So,
Yeah, I think that's really
go ahead,
important
Joe.
because, I was just going to say, because I mean, we've had people that have we invite our medical student rotators to our journal clubs. And we've had people who have gone to journal clubs and gotten intoxicated at the journal club. And I'm like, that is just death right there. Because I don't know if you have a problem. I don't know what that's going on. So remember, the whole thing is an interview. I mean, the whole experience is an interview, and you want to show your best during that whole time.
Wonderful. All right. So we're going to get ready to wrap up, but I have some last minute questions. There was one lingering question around the importance and impact of step 2. This has significantly shifted, and I think Marseille alluded to it a little bit earlier about how this is now becoming the equalizer. So my question really is just, 1, how important is it? And 2, what happens if this has been you had to take it twice, or you had to take it multiple times? How does that really weigh into decision making at this point?
So I think we've been having Dr. Bradby go first each time. I'll take a stab at it. It's been much more heavy at my program. And so number 1 really is letters. That is your letters, your dean's letters, your SLOs have always been what we focus on the most, that part of your package. But and we have set kind of a bar for our step 2, which is kind of basically had us have some students that probably didn't make the cut to be invited for interviews, but that was last year. We are taking a more holistic view of all of our students this year. And so we are not going to rely as heavily on step 2. We're going to look at more experiences. It is a red flag if you had to take it more than one time. But again, if you are really talking about what happened during that time and explaining it away in your personal statement in a way that makes us able to connect with you and understand what happened, I don't think that would preclude you from getting an interview. And again, I just want to reiterate to everyone, this is your time. Programs who wouldn't have even looked at you twice now are really taking a step back and having a more holistic view of students, and you are possibly going to get interviews. So don't cut yourself short thinking, oh, that program's not going to interview me because I failed step 2 once or twice. Apply anyway. This is your year.
I think it's what I'm hearing from a lot of people that it's program dependent. So speaking from UCSF and being on that committee for a bit, is for us, we haven't been looking at step 1 or step 2 specifically if you come from disadvantaged backgrounds. So we have a special evaluation where we put you through to the interview and really try to focus on your SLOEs as well as your experiences and personal statements. But again, that's how it has been in the last 2 years. I'm not sure if it will change, and we're hoping not. There's been a big push for our institution to really not look at numbers, and we're spending a little bit less time looking at dean's letter just because we found a huge bias among our students of color and some of the words that were words and phrases that were being used in dean's letters. So that's kind of the move that UCSF is going for in this next year.
Yeah, the only thing I'll throw in there is for most programs, institution-wise, you have to pass step 2 in order to start. And so if you fail it, you want to make damn sure that you have a passing score before the ranked lists are due, because programs may not rank you if you have not passed step 2. So keep in mind that time deadline.
If you had to take it multiple times, make sure you know the rules for the states in which you're applying. So you can't get licensed in the state of North Carolina if you failed a single step more than 3 times, or you have to get special dispensation to get licensed or something. And so I'm less inclined to hire those people because I might hire you and then you can't get licensed here because you have to have a training license in order to be a resident in our state. So it's not a big deal if you fail it once, but if you're failing it multiple times, make sure you know the rules where you are so that you don't waste your money applying to states where you can't get licensed.
These are all super helpful pieces of information. And I know that if I were in the application cycle now, I would really gravitate towards what you all have shared. I just want to give everyone one last second to kind of talk about, I know it's going to be crazy, but in a minute, your program, what you would want someone to remember as like a lasting message? You can go ahead and I'm gonna start with Joel then.
Man, putting the pressure on me right away. So I would say, we're very proud of our program at VCU. We value the individual we value. We want a diverse and inclusive residency program to reflect our patient population that we deal with. We have a very vulnerable population, enrichment and under-resourced and academic medical center. So I think we have a bit of the best of both worlds. And we're always looking to, be more reflective of who we care for and who our general population is in general. So happy to help anybody, whether you're interested in VC or not. Please feel free. You can just Google me. My email will pop up, but it's joel.moll@vcuhealth.org. I can put that in the chat as well, but I'm happy to help anybody, but I hope you're interested in VCU.
All right, Marcel, you want to jump in?
Sure, I'm coming to you from the nation's capital at George Washington University. We are formerly known as, DC, formerly known as Chocolate City, but we're still 49%. About our program, we are very heavy in health policy. We are down the block from the Capitol, and most of our residents are really focused in areas around health policy, equity, research. We have all of the subspecialty departments within our large academic center. We take care of a different plethora of patients, from the medically underserved in Ward 8 all the way to congressmen and senators on a daily basis. We have a great trauma shop, and we are a very diverse faculty as well as residency. We actually have 9 Black women on faculty, which is why I came to GW, because I wanted to be my authentic self, and I love that my department allows me to be that. And so I encourage you to apply to our program.
All right, Nancy, you still there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for checking
No
in.
problem.
No, what can I say about San Francisco? So although, I think the image of San Francisco has been changing lately in the media, but when you think of sometimes of the city of San Francisco, a lot of times we were thinking a lot of wealth, the Golden Gate Bridge, but for those students who are like really interested in obviously like equity, justice, and disparity, a city like this has like huge disparities in like income, and although our like Latino and Black population are smaller, we still, like at San Francisco General, which is our county hospital, see more than 50% are from those communities. And I think that's what I really appreciate, is that I get to work in these 2 institutions that are, the academic center, but as well as your county center within a city that really values like social services, right? So I never have to argue with a service of why to admit someone who's unhoused that has cellulitis that could be treated as an outpatient, but he just needs a place to sleep to elevate his leg. So to me, that's kind of what's kept me at UCSF, is that it's not just my department that has this like social justice lens, but it's like the entire institution that's really focusing on that. And again, we value like diversity, but as well as gender equity and issues around sexuality are really important here in our city. And so just like I was said in other programs, one thing that I think as a student, that if you're looking for an institution that values DEI and has been doing it for a while, look at the faculty. And again, we also have a good amount of Latino, Black, Pacific Islander faculty here, and we're constantly pushing them to do more. So look at the faculty if you're really trying to see like how much work has been done at the institution. And again, not just riding the wave that's been happening lately. We'd love to have you here, obviously. Thank you.
Excellent. Oh, of course. Cassie, go ahead and round us out.
So of course I go last, but that being said, coming to you from Eastern North Carolina, where we have a 29 county catchment area comprising 2.1 million people. Our ED sees more patients per year than the population of the city in which we reside. You'll be hard pressed to find a hospital that can say that to you. We are a 900-bed hospital. We have our own children's hospital, our own peds ED, and a 58-bed adult ED that is always constantly growing. I am excited excited to talk to y'all about the amazingness that is East Carolina University and how we are growing out into our region and how we're really meeting the need for folks who do not have doctors, who have no way to get to a doctor, who come to us by helicopter from 3+ hours away sometimes. So know that you will get outstanding training here at the 4th oldest independent department of emergency medicine in the country. We celebrate 41 years as a residency this year. So know that you will come to some place that has been training folks for a very long time. And I'd like to believe that we have gotten really good at it. So if you'd like to come to Greenville, we'd be happy to have you guys.
Wonderful, y'all. Everybody, if you're still with us as participants, give a round of applause or put something in the chat to show love to our panelists. We've had a wonderful conversation today. And the thing that really resonates for me about everyone here is training is important. And these decisions can be a function of who you are and your personality. And more importantly, we still are colleagues on the back end. We're friends. This is a community in emergency medicine. We want to see you all succeed. So feel free to reach out to anyone that's here as a panelist. If you have additional questions or you'd like to connect, again, be mindful that they are also in the throes of the application season. So allow for some time for response if they haven't responded immediately. And then last but not least, a big shout out to Love and Anani for being the coordinator for this today. We are so thankful to Tour for Diversity for creating a space that this conversation can live. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, and thank you to all of our panelists. I know the round of applause is coming around virtually from everyone in the chat. Thank you for all joining us, and we ask that you continue your membership with SNMA and LMSA. If you need to reach any of the panelists, they will post their email, or you can reach out to Tour for Diversity on Instagram and Twitter, and I will be able to connect you with all the panelists. Last but not least, as everyone says, we must do it for the gram. Can all of our panelists give us a nice smile? 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. And we hope to see all of you on the EM Trail. Have a good night.